to another edition of Reestablishment, a podcast for everyone that some topic will appeal to you at some point in time. And today, this is a very special one. We're so glad you're with us. I'm your host, Bodie D'Andrea, coming to you from the beautiful CTN studios in beautiful Clearwater, Tampa Bay area, Florida. Today, we want to talk about kids. You know, have you ever thought about where this generation is? Being a parent myself, I've been fortunate enough to raise 3 generations of kids, 2 millennials, 1 Z, and I have a Gen A. And I can tell you that they see the world from different viewpoints. They operate at a different level. They question things differently. But where do you see today's kids and maybe the kids of the future? There's no better person than to have today as our guest on this podcast than Mr. Brooks Gibbs. Brooks, good to have you.
Hey, Bodie. Thanks for having me on this show, dude.
Yeah, so actually, when I was putting together a list of folks I wanted to have come in here, you were near the top of my list. And I think when you first affiliated with us, I went and asked you, I'm going to be doing a podcast. Would you please come on the podcast? Mm-hmm. And thank you that your answer was yes.
Well, thank you for your hospitality. As you know, CTN has been so generous and gracious for all my production needs. I make viral videos. I make videos that are mental health videos. They're shown in schools across the country. Parents use my videos to teach their kids social and emotional skills. And I'm producing all these videos from CTN studios here in Clearwater area. So I feel so blessed to be a co-laborer with you.
Well, thank you very much. And let's just get right into this. And let's start talking about emotional stability. You know, one of the things I think we see is these generations that are in the now are, they live by their emotions. You know, you and I know that a person that lives by their emotions, it's like somebody walking on eggshells. Mm-hmm. And so those of our audience can probably think about people they work with that are very emotional beings. And every day you come to work, you're like, well, you got to test the waters. What kind of response am I going to get today? When really we want to have some stability. And young people only go by the examples that they've had and the training that they've had. Why do you think kids today are considered weaker than maybe generations in the past?
I think because we have set them up with an expectation that they are entitled to a life without problems. And if they have any problems, especially people problems, then they just can go to the authorities and the authorities will solve the problem for them. We as grown-ups are so terrified that a kid might kill themselves or self-mutilate or go to some sort of substance or addictive behavior that we try to remove all the problems from them and say that we'll solve them for them. And the anti-bullying movement is the greatest example of that because it's essentially telling kids no one has the right to be mean to you. And if they are, you tell me, I'll write a law, I'll find a law, and I'll punish that kid to the full extent of that law, being an anti-bullying law, so that they are out of your life for hurting your feelings. And so never before in the history of the world have we had a social welfare state or an emotional welfare state. This is the first time in the last 20 years where now welfare state is not financial or economical, it's social and emotional ultimately. You're entitled to not have any problems, and the authorities and the government must make sure that you have a utopia to grow up in.
Well, here's what happens. You get down this road, and there's no way to get out. It's this circle that just keeps getting worse in the loop. And then they start looping back on themselves. And then the aha moment for the person that got me, I try to get you back. And it's this weird circle that we never really get out of.
Right, because that's called the victim cycle.
Yeah.
It's I've done this work for 23, 24, actually 25 years this year. I've been speaking at schools. And it's very interesting to me that when I interview kids, and I've been in front, 2 million of them I've been in front of, and I ask, could I please meet a bully? Can I meet someone who identifies as a bully? No one will raise their hand. Can I please meet a victim, someone who's been, targeted of bullying? Everyone raises their hand. So that tells me everyone views themselves as a victim and they blame the other of being a bully. Right. I tell schools all the time, we don't have a bully problem. We have a victim problem. And if we victim-proof students and make sure that all of our actions are to cure them of their tendency to be offended, as opposed to teaching them how to be offended, then we're going to see a decrease in aggression and, of course, mental health problems.
That is so true. And, I said it to a group last week. We've created probably since 2005, we've created an industry on mental health, just much like an auto industry, where so many billions and trillions of dollars have funneled into this. And yet what's the return? None. Suicide rates are the same. Everything else is the same. But now you can't go back. Could you imagine somebody saying, well,
we're going to cut funding for mental health?
This 1-800 number, we're going to turn it off. Optically, that would look terrible.
Right.
So we've built this train that is on this track that just we can't stop it. And so I think that's part of it. The other thing, too, is we need to look, especially with the kids, at the parents. If you look back sociologically over the last 2 or 3 generations, where you see some of the parents that maybe came out of the free love hippie movement, how did they raise their kids? And then you look at the other ones that came back where they stayed with their parents till they were in their 25, 30 years old before they moved out on their own. How are they viewing their young children now? So I think that there's some of this that, like you said, at least 20 years old. But you have to go back and look at the parent skills as well. And then how do we reach to the whole family?
Yeah, and I think it's a mistake to focus so much on emotions. And that's, right, I think, part of the contributor to the problem. I'm a PhD in social psychology, so I've done my fair share of therapy with people. And I have, when someone comes to me because their feelings are hurt or something's going on in their life, there's 3 things I could focus on, and I only focus on one of 3 things. The first thing is the activating event, the problem, what happened. I could focus on that, but it's typically skewed because they don't see things right. They're full of distortions. There's 3 sides to every story, his, hers, and the truth, right? So I don't have all parties involved, so I'm not going to care so much about what happened to them. I could focus on how they feel. How do you feel about it? Your emotional consequences. But that's a never-ending abyss of sorrow and sadness. Instead, I focus on the most important thing is that's their belief about what happened. What do you think about what just happened to you? Because that determines how you feel. If I focus on how you feel, how are you feeling? How are you sleeping? How's the emotional consequences of the activating event that happened to you? It's not going to be helpful. But any therapist worth their salt will zero in on what do you believe? What are your expectations that ought not, should not, must not have happened to me? And if you can learn to say, hey, man, it's well with my soul. It's all good. I'm going to be all right. I'm not going to catastrophize over the thing that happened to me. So focusing on feelings makes kids obsess over their feelings. And they actually love feeling the extreme feelings. And that's what all the music is now. I got teenagers at home, and I'll hear sometimes music, in their room. And I'll say, this is the most neurotic song I've ever heard in my life. She's like sitting in this sick sadness of a heartbreak. Dude, we do not glorify negative emotions. They're the enemy.
I'm glad I'm not the only parent that feels that way.
Well, and what parent hasn't had trouble,
right,
with their kids' music choice? And why do we care so much is because, as a person thinks in their mind, so they are.
Right.
We need to be careful what we're putting into our. So emo. Remember emo?
I do.
Now, like everybody's emo.
Right.
They may not be wearing black and slashing their wrists and arms as much, but inside they're all in the feels, and I think that's a sickness. We're not to be all in the feels. We're to have grit. We're to be able to say, you know what? So what? That happened to me. I'm going to move on with my life. I'm not going to dwell on it.
What are some practical tips maybe for kids and their parents to giving grit? What are some common sense things that kids can do? Maybe they're in a dysfunctional house, and a lot of times they parent themselves. So what are some things that kids can do to make themselves stronger? And then what are some things some parents can do?
Well, as a person thinks, that drives their emotions. So if the goal is to have emotional resilience, then we're going to have to think about resilient thinking. resilient thinking. So there's 3 questions I love to teach parents to transfer to their kids. And that is to process unwanted events, the bummers in life. Process those bummers through 3 questions. How could this have been worse? Why won't this matter in my future? And how could this turn out for my good?
Say that again. Those are good.
Yeah. How could this have been worse? It's not as bad as it could have been.
Right.
Why won't this matter in my future? This problem's not forever. And how could this turn out for my good? The worst thing that ever happened to me could actually be the best thing for me. And if you could train your child to process every bummer through those 3 in that order, I call it negative, neutral, positive. How could it be worse? Why wouldn't it matter in my future? How could this turn out for my good? Their emotions will dissipate because whatever the bummer is that happened to them, they'll already think in their mind, this bummer is a good thing. It could actually be a good thing. And there's brevity to it. It's not going to last forever. And you know what? At least it's not as bad as it could have been.
Right.
And that's amazing when you have that elasticity of mind, which is what resilience is all about, the ability to bounce back and blaze forward when you're crushed with hardship. It's thinking positively. And I always tell parents, we're not teaching our kids to lie to themselves because it actually could be a good thing. It could have been worse, and it really doesn't matter in their future. So I'm not saying lie to yourself. I'm teaching your child how to discover the answers to these questions. Because once they understand and rigorously believe that it could be worse or could have been worse, it doesn't matter in their future, and it actually could turn out for their good. When they rigorously, authentically believe those things, they can't stay bummed for a long time.
Right. Do you, having done this for so long, how do you see kids that are like this as they grow into adulthood? Does it make a difference on their quality of life as an adult? Does it make a difference on their potential to be an income earner, to hold a job? What are the lasting ramifications?
Well, mindset is everything.
Right.
Mindset is everything. And so if you have, in hardship is like a reality of life. This life is hard.
Right.
Life is hard, wear a helmet, as it's been said. Well, how do I endure the hardship? Do I have the skills to be able to guard my heart, to protect my emotions from being absolutely crushed and devastated when my new wife leaves me, or if my child dies because we have a miscarriage, or if I lose my job, in my first career, or if I get rejected by 6 universities I really wanted to. I mean, there's just rejection everywhere. Life is full of hardship. Yeah. This mindset is going to change the quality of life. It's going to make all the difference in the world between happy, whether you are happy or not. Right. Can you stay happy and have inner confidence and what we would call joy, that solid confidence that things are going to turn out okay. So every parent says, I want my kid to be happy. But hardly any parent understands how to give their child a happy mindset, a joyful mindset, an overcoming mindset.
Right.
And if you want them to be successful, well, look what entrepreneurs do. They exploit unwanted catastrophes to their advantage. They say, hey, this is actually an opportunity for us to exploit this to our advantage. And we need to think about problems that way. How could I exploit this problem to my advantage? And it always can be, but you have to be trained how.
Yeah, in my former career in law enforcement, human nature doesn't change.
Right.
It's always been the same. And I was teaching a class on emotions to other law enforcement people. And as a Christian, as I started studying to prepare this class, I'm looking and I'm like, God, you really only created us with half of the emotions. The rest of these came after the fall of man. And so a lot of emotions that we emote or that we feel were not originally created by God. They were as a result of sin or a result of fallen mankind. So again, how do we take those, identify them, and categorize them properly and put them where they need to be?
I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
You may have never thought of it this way. I certainly never considered that we only had half of our emotions. In a sense, before the fall, as you would say, in the historical and biblical view of creation, You had perfection. You had
Correct.
utopia. You had Eden, the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And so there was just, you had the positive side of the emotional spectrum, as opposed to the negative side of the emotional spectrum. And that's a really good way to view emotions as a spectrum. You have up and down, which is high energy and low energy. And then you've got side to side, left being negative, right being positive. So if you think of an axis point of up, down, side to side, we only had the up, down, high energy, low energy, positive. But most of the kids today that suffer are in the high energy, low energy, negative.
Yeah.
And this is actually the best way to describe the difference between anxiety and depression. If you ask any kid today, what's the difference between anxiety and depression, they will not be able to tell you. Even doctoral students, university level kids will not be able to say what the difference is. And they use it interchangeably. They talk about, they're always depressed or always full of anxiety. Some people say, well, anxiety is about the future and depression is about the past. But if you really geek out on it, it doesn't hold water.
Right.
Because you could be depressed about your future prospects,
That's true.
and you could be full of anxious because of all the regret that you've had in your past. So what is the difference? And it's simply energy levels. It is the same negative perspective, but energy levels are different. High energy negative is anxious feelings. Low energy negative. So we have to teach our kids how to crawl out of the dark tunnel of negative thinking and how to regulate their energy levels, which is really a body budget process. Am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Am I, hanging around people that will help me regulate my adrenal glands? And adrenal glands are essentially the epinephrine, the energy, the fight or flight type stuff. So someone who has chronic anxiety and someone who has a chronic depression can cure themselves of those ailments when they're able to positively think about, this body physiological feeling that I'm having inside of anxiousness. I can learn how to bring it down through exercise and through diet and through talking with a good friend. And I could keep thinking positively, because all anxiety is high energy with a negative frame.
Yeah, that's
and if you
true.
go to Cambodia, for example, they don't have a word for anxiety. They don't have a word for depression. They use words that are physiological, like the water's falling out of my heart. That's what we would call despair.
Wow.
Or my heart is spinning. That's what we would call anxiety. And we ask them in Cambodia, we'd say, well, what do you do when you feel despair or that feeling, or you feel like your heart's racing? Well, they have very natural remedies and they have positive perspectives. And so I love to teach kids practically, your mental health is really body health. It's brain health. It's perspective health. It's solical health. It's holistic.
Right.
And
It has to be.
Yeah, and you need to learn how to possess your vessel in a way that's healthy and keep your perspective in a way that's positive.
I taught my kids, I said, I kind of think of emotions as like the antenna on a cockroach. They're like feelers, and it should be feedback on what's going on around you. And I've always taught my kids, what's inside of you should be greater than what goes on around you. Mm-hmm. And if you take it that way, that it's just feedback, and that's not how you live by those feelings, I think we're at a better position to say, okay, this is what's going on around me. Now, how do I address that? Rather than living in that kind of emotion. And then I think you said something really important too, is it's soulful. It's a holistic approach, which does include the spirit part of it. And that's your inside man. I was talking to a guy one time, it's kind of anecdotal, but he was homeless. He had lost everything, and he became an alcoholic and living behind a building. And I was talking to him, and he says, you know what? He says, they tell me I'm bipolar. And I said, well, congratulations, I'm tripolar. I said, all of us have a body, soul, and mind. Yeah. And I said, I think your problem is your inside man is not stronger than your fleshly man, where your mind or your physical body is craving alcohol. But your inside man, I think, wants to do the right thing. It's just not strong enough. So how do we make the inside man stronger to put down those physical feelings that we would attach those with an emotion and live by those. And I think that's so very important. So when you said holistic, I'm tracking that. And I'm saying, yeah, how do we teach our kids that there's more than just what's out there and what you're seeing, but there's more to you than that, right?
Yeah, and I think most people don't realize this about the Beatitudes, but I look at the Beatitudes as a pathway to recovery and holistic health. It starts with admitting you don't have what you need. You're powerless. Blessed are the poor in spirit.
Right.
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Like once you come to the end of yourself and say, I keep screwing my life up, I can't seem to get a hold of it. Then you start weeping. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that attracts the comforter. So first you're realizing I don't have what I need. That's self-awareness. And then you say, I need help, and you're crying out for help. That's self-advocacy. And then someone comes along and says, do this. Get up early in the morning. Go to bed early in the morning. Eat health, not processed foods. Stay away from sugar and these things to try to get your body all dialed in and start thinking positively and doing some basic, healthy, successful practices in your life. And that's where the meekness comes. It says, blessed are those who meek, who have self-control. For they'll inherit the earth.
Yeah.
And you know why they inherit the earth? Because if they can learn how to manage themselves, and that's all meekness is, management of self, strength under control, then they'll get promoted. They can manage other people. And then it goes on, and I'll stop at the 4th, but there's 8 of them. Once you're ready and you realize, wow, I'm doing exactly what my comforter told me to do. I'm having this, I'm controlling my life. I'm seeing some victory. You hunger and thirst for righteousness. And blessed are those, for they shall be filled. What else can I change? What else can I do to grow? Yeah. And so the process of, I think, mental health is taking one vice at a time with a trusted mentor, a parent, youth
Very
pastor,
key.
someone. Yeah, to be able to say, just tell me what to do, and I will do it. And I will get the benefits from doing what you tell me to do. Submitting to that.
And I think a lot of it is, if we just told everybody to stop doing what's wrong, don't do this, don't do that, I think it's more of start doing something right.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the can'ts, shouldn'ts, but focus on this is what I can do. If a kid has really bad oral hygiene, you don't say, all right, you're going to have to brush 3 times a day and floss twice. Why don't you just say, hey, before you go to bed, can you brush your teeth? And just start doing something right. Maybe not eat so much sugar. Maybe cut out the gum. And so instead of just saying, don't do this, don't do that, do this 3 times, and just say, look, just start something right. I think people will get the idea, and it's self-propagating, right? Once you start seeing a change, then that becomes self-propagating. And then change becomes change.
Yeah, because parents really have become activists against their children's behavior as opposed to advocates for their child's potential behavior.
Correct.
And I've never met a happy activist.
Yeah.
I never have.
That's true.
They're always complaining. They're always, against the man. They're always yelling and fighting and having a thorn in their side. But I've seen happy advocates who are really advocating for a greater potential and a this or that. And so parenting really becomes not activists against your child's wayward behavior, but like you're saying, preach for, not against, preach for. Yeah. Awaken your inner Joel Osteen, yeah. Who rarely would have a discouraging word and say, I believe great things for you, kiddo. I would love to see you get up early in the morning. Do you think you can do that? And I'll reward you for that. And, what you focus on will expand. What you focus on, you'll get more of. Right. And whether that's negative attention or positive attention. And that's a good general life principle for parenting kids. Praise, praise, and praise. It's how I think our Heavenly Father treats us.
And I think it's how we're designed.
To respond.
To respond to that.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like He is. When we worship and praise Him, He responds. Man, it's been so great to have you today. And those of you that are watching today, brooksgibbs.com, brooksgibbs.com. You need to go there, check it out, get with this guy. If you have questions or you have, if we've said something today that has piqued something in you that you need to reach out, this is the guy to do it. And he does it in love, and he does it because he cares. So we're so glad to have you today. Going to have you back another day.
Awesome. I'm glad you're doing this, Bodie.
Thanks.
I love seeing you on, behind the mic.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. Hey, you have a great day. Be filled with joy, and may all good riches come your way.
Raise your hands up. Raise them up. Reestablishment. We've not yet complete. Let's talk about it from A to Z.
It's been second nature. So I go to Bible college and I feel like I want to be going.
This episode is brought to you by Soul Fit Retreats. Soul Fit Retreats are life-changing experiences for the mind, body, and spirit. Each retreat is a unique combination of faith, health, fitness, and fun. Join the welcoming community for a journey that will empower you, encourage you, and challenge you to become the best version of yourself. Visit soulfitretreats.com today.